You're ready.
Awesome. Okay, well, good afternoon. I'm here with Deborah. This is Simon Cazares with KW South Bay office. So what I'd like to talk to you a little bit about is a form or a contractor relationships regarding missing contract relating to time periods. So Deborah, if you can do me a big favor and let me share my computer. Am I allowed to do so now? Okay, let me share my computer real quick. Can you see this?
Here we go. I can now, yes.
Okay, beautiful. So let me share my side. Okay, so missing contract related to timeframes. What is this? It's so important to know as you submitting offers. Right now, we're dealing with so many dynamics regarding very low inventory, tons of buyers, and what we're seeing a lot is multiple offers. So I was having a conversation with Deborah earlier this morning in regards to, we always talk about defining the purchase agreement, making sure that every line that is necessary is filled correctly. Missing items will delay the process and it'll make you look like you do not know, what to add, what to put on these contracts. From a standpoint of a seller and a listing agent, those are crucial. Remember, we always talk about fine-tuning a resume, going for a job interview, right? And we look at when a resume is given is, we look at the history, the experience, educations, what references. That should also be similar to your contracts, your purchase agreements. Making sure that everything is looked at, added into the purchase agreement to allow you to present yourself in your case, because your livelihood depends on it. Missing items can definitely alter your position to either not get your offer considered or ultimately get your offer counter. All right, so let's flip it here. So offers made using the RPA. Some of the things that I hear a lot on the purchase agreement is regarding the expiration of the agreement. Under paragraph 31, it deems revoke unless seller signs and personally receives by the buyer or designated person. If you look at paragraph 31 of the RPA, which illustrates just below here, it talks about 31, expiration of offer. This offer shall be deemed revoked and the deposit, if any, shall be returned to the buyer unless offer is signed by seller and a copy of the signed offer is personally received by the buyer or by, and there's a blank line. Now, here's my thing, and this is something that I'm very stickler to. I always get this question, should the agent put their name on that blank line? The answer is it all depends. And what I mean by it all depends is the buyer's agent can put their name on there, but I don't recommend it. Because if your buyer is also looking at other properties and submitting other offers, then by you putting your name and you receiving that offer, then you're deemed acceptable, okay? So I'd rather leave it blank. That way, when you do receive this offer signed and executed by the seller, then ultimately you have to revert to a conversation with the buyer. Then once the buyer executes and deems acceptance, then we have what we call a bona fide agreement. Then we can move on to open escrow. Now, late acceptance is not a binding agreement, okay? So the contract already stipulates, guys, that it's a 3-day, 72 days, or 72 hours, I should say, not 72 days. 72 hours to get a offer considered by the seller. So when you submit the offer to the listing agent, you're already bound by the agreement of this paragraph that says that within 3 days, this offer is pretty much expired. So you can modify those agreements. You can make it for less time or more time, but it already defaults by paragraph 31 as 3 days. So if we continue reading what it says, it says seller and copy of the signed offer is personally received by the buyer or blank who is authorized to receive it by 5 o'clock on the 3rd day this offer was signed, okay? Or you can modify the time, or you can also modify the date. Now, my suggestion, depending on the circumstances, and it all really depends on the circumstances, right? You know, you're on a, submitted an offer on a fairly new listing, right? Just came on the market, you know, you gotta ask those right questions. And what are those right questions? Well, you gotta have a concise conversation with the listing agent, and the listing agent should also intervene with giving you some insight. Is this something that the seller is going to entertain in the next 24 hours today? Or is it something that is going to be 5 or 4 days? Because if that's the case, folks, this offer is not binding because it would expire in 3 days. And how many times have you heard where the seller says, well, we're not going to entertain or review offers till Friday? Well, today is Monday, folks. And if you leave this alone, right, it already sets and defaults to 3 days by 5 o'clock. And I can promise you there's a lot of agents don't see this paragraph because this is one of the last paragraphs on the purchase agreement. So what does that tell you? What does that put you? Well, it puts you on an expired offer, meaning that the seller does not have to entertain this offer. Even though they said we received your offer, we will get back to you either if we're going to reject it or counter or accept it by Friday. That's still 4 days from today. So in my opinion, this is not a valid agreement. So how do we approach this in a way to help you get your offer, at least not reject it, but ultimately carry forward? Let me go to the next paragraph. My apologies here, 1 second. Okay, so, okay. So parties can agree after an expiration. If both parties agreed, late acceptance can be binding in writing, extend date and time of expiration. So here's the question. If you know that this offer will not be looked at till Friday, which Friday would put you at what, the 19th of this month. That means that you need to put that in writing, folks, to keep it alive. Okay, so one of the things you can do is you're going to put that the expiration of this offer will be till the 19th, not 3 days from today, because 3 days puts you at the 18th of March. At 5 o'clock, this offer is no longer a bona fide agreement, folks. So be very careful. It's the little things that you have to worry about. Even though the conversation may be verbally, that the listing agent says, no problem, Simon, you know, we have your offer, but your offer will not be considered until Friday. You know, if there's ever a dispute, this is one that they can definitely dispute and say, well, Simon, you know, your offer did say 3 days that this would be considered void. Because the buyer also has some control to the RPA, folks. The buyer also has direction in how they want this to play out as well. So reading and having conversations with the listing agent will put you in a good position to ultimately continue moving forward. So keep this in mind, and this is where it's very crucial that you have dialogue with the listing agent and ask specific questions. If it's a Mr. or if it's a Mrs., Mr. Mrs. agent, you know, when is your seller or when are you planning to review this with your client, the seller? Well, we're looking into entertaining or reviewing offers on Friday around 6 o'clock. Great. The only reason I say this is because I want to make sure that our offer is considered So I'll make sure that on paragraph 31, it doesn't expire. Now, I'm just saying this theoretically speaking. You're not saying this to the listing agent, but you're thinking it out loud. Okay, I need to have this this expiration date extended till the end of the week. That way it keeps this offer still valid until they make considerations of either accepting, counter, or rejecting your offer.
Simon,
Yes.
if I can interrupt, I think you have addressed this, but I want to read it because someone did put a question.
Perfect.
Seller wanted, is there a way to make a late acceptance binding, or would you have to create a new offer?
That's a very good question.
That's what you were addressing, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So if in fact they did not respond, they weren't responding, you have to get that request to extend it prior to your expiration, or at that point you really should write a new contract. Is that correct?
No, it's not necessary for you to redo the entire purchase agreement. And as we progress through the slideshow, you'll see what I'm talking about of how do you handle when if there's an expiration, because there's questions. Well, what happens if this offer gets accepted after it expires? Okay. Now, if there is mutual agreement, folks, from both the seller and the buyer, it doesn't matter. But right now, what we're dealing with a lot of multiple offers, right? Very low inventory, tons of buyers making multiple offers on one house, and there might be 10, 15 homes. Now, from the standpoint of the listing agent, they're not going to know all the conversations. This is why it's good to have it in paper, okay? Because that they can always revert back to the purchase agreement to define, okay, now I remember this conversation with Simon. I remember that we were going to extend it, and this is how we do it, okay? So I'll get to that question in a minute, Deborah. So just to conclude to this page, conducting that may be considered a waive or intended to be bound. Buyers make a deposit, buyer paying for an inspection, seller providing disclosures and repairs, buyer or seller negotiating over repairs. So these are some of the things that will alter the question that even if the offer was, was extended or expired, then it'll still give you a perspective that, okay, the seller at least send me copies of the previous inspection, or the seller is in cahoots with accepting our offer and then opening up escrow. So those are what we call defining bona fide agreements that allows both the buyer and the seller, even after an expired offer, to continue with the process. Now, going back to the question, how do you extend if the offer has not been considered but will be considered? Let's just say last minute you reach out to the listing agent and you're just doing a courtesy follow-up. Hey, this is Simon over at KW. We submitted an offer 2 days ago. I'm a little concerned, our offer will be expiring tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Do we have any updates from the seller? Has the seller looked at the offers? When is the seller going to review offers, right? And then the listing agent comes back and says, well, Simon, thank you so much for reaching out. As a matter of fact, what I thought we were going to review offers tomorrow, unfortunately, we have a little bit of a setback. And that setback is going to push us now till Friday to review offers. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much for giving me heads up. I'm so glad I was able to reach out to you to get this updated information. Now, the conversation that you're having with the listing agent is, okay, how do we handle an offer that was now going to be expired? Well, it's a very simple component. You just do an extension or an addendum to that you're extending the time frame of the expiration. So you add an addendum and you send that addendum to the listing agent, meaning you don't have to rewrite the entire offer. Because the question is, theoretically speaking, Once it's expired, that means you got to rewrite the offer again with the new dates. The question here is you do not have to do that. You just do an addendum, adding that to the purchase agreement and saying that we are extending this agreement to a later date, and whatever date that is. In this case, for the sake of argument, we're pushing it till March 19th at 5 p.m. or 3 p.m. or 6 p.m., whatever time frame that is. So I hope that answers the question. Okay. So also, what we deal with is counter offers and rejection of offers. So counter offer is a rejection of the offer, and that is so true. If you submit an offer, the RPA, and the offer is not accepted, you get a counter offer. What the seller is telling you is that your offer was rejected. Well, Simon, wait a minute. What do you mean the offer got rejected? Yeah, your offer in the terms of that got rejected. Not saying that the offer is not canceled, but the terms of what you submitted was not to the seller's satisfaction. Therefore, this is what we're proposing back to you, to the buyer. The counteroffer is not an acceptance subject to modified terms. A counteroffer is a new offer based upon the original purchase agreement terms plus any substituting terms. Very simple. You submit an offer for $1 million, 30-day escrow. You're putting, $10,000 deposit. You're not asking for any home warranty. And your down payment is 10% down, let's just say. Now the offer submitted, the listing agent receives the offer, and the listing agent, after talking to the seller, says, okay, we have to do some different terms. This is where the seller counteroffer comes into play. Now what has transitioned is that your offer, technically the terms of the offer has been rejected. Now the seller is giving you what their expectations are, what their terms are. And this is where the seller counteroffer comes into existence. Now, does the buyer have to accept the terms of the seller's counter? The answer is no, they don't have to. They don't have to accept the seller's counter. This is where the buyer can now send out what is called a buyer's counteroffer. And this is the reason there's numbers on the counteroffers. Seller counteroffer number 1, buyer counteroffer number 1, seller counteroffer number 2, buyer counteroffer number 2. You play what we call tennis, back and forth, until you, as the buyer's agent and the buyer and the listing agent and the seller come to an agreement and a conclusion. That's when we have a modified agreement, once both principals are in agreement to the terms of whatever counteroffers. If it's the buyer's final counteroffer or if it's the seller's final counteroffer, then that's when it starts the initial process of acceptance. Once it's accepted, that's your period for either a 30-day or a 45-day or a 25-day escrow. So the first day that the offer is considered accepted, that starts the time frame of a 30-day period. We're going to use 30-day because that's typically what we see right now in the market, 30-day escrow. So today would be considered 0 days of a 30-day process. Tomorrow will be considered 1. The following day, it would be considered 2, then 3, okay? Also.
Question?
Yes.
Okay, so 2 things. One, the question came from, you're talking about the expired. So when extending an expired offer, do the 72 hours apply?
Repeat the question.
When extending an expired offer, do the 72 hours apply? This is Milena.
Okay, very good question. So what you're doing with the 72 hours, so the 72 hours on the purchase agreement, folks, already in default, meaning it's already written on the purchase agreement. That's already set. Whatever modifications you do to it, either reduce the time frame or increase the time frame, depends on the circumstances. So the 72 hours stays in place. So for example, if you want to get an offer considered faster, or acknowledge faster, then you're going to reduce the 72 hours to 24 hours or 48 hours as an example. Because here's the thing, maybe the buyer is looking at other properties. The buyer submitting offers at other properties does not want to wait the 72 hours. Therefore, they're giving the seller a time frame to respond to this offer. And if the seller does not respond in a time frame that is requested by the buyer, then ultimately the offer gets expired, right? The offer basically dies. Now the buyer can ultimately go in a different direction. Now, it's a different market of what we're dealing right now, because there's very low inventory. I don't need the buyer to be that aggressive. Only if they know that there's hardly any offers on, or the property has been sitting on the market for 30, 40 plus days on market, then you have some room of negotiations that alters the position of the buyer. I need urgency on this acceptance. Are you going to accept, or are you going to counter? And I'm only giving you 20 to 48 hours to do so. Now, on the flip side to the question, Deborah, you were asking is, if you're pushing the time frame, then you're extending that 72 hours to a later date. That 72 is still within the time frame. For example, if you do it now, a day from now, 2 days, or exactly 70 hours, 1 hour before it expires, or 69 hours before it expires, right? Then that's when you do the extension agreement saying, we mutually agree to the extension of this offer be pushed till March 19. And once the buyer and the seller initiate the signature, then that ultimately approves that the seller is going to extend the review of this offer to a later date, and the buyer is in acknowledgement as well to that extension. So therefore, your offer does not expire 72 hours of submitting this offer. Remember, it's 72 hours at 5 p.m. is when that expires. So at 5:01, ladies and gentlemen, this offer expires. And therefore, if you haven't done any extensions, you can modify it by doing an addendum, or you would have to rewrite the entire offer, depending on the listing agent, folks, okay? The instruction is ultimately the listing agent. If the listing agent says, look, Simon, I completely understand that an addendum can be drafted mutually agreeing to the extension of this expiration date, but in all honesty, I want to keep it as clean as possible. We don't want to add that. We're just going to have you do a new purchase agreement. Now, the question here is, having the buyer to agree to signing again the RPA. If the buyer truly wants this property, therefore they're not going to question it, then you can get a new purchase agreement signed. Okay? Any other questions?
The other, I would like you to, if you would be so kind to repeat, because I get this asked a lot, and I was up against it myself actually recently, the numbering. So we have a seller counteroffer, a buyer counteroffer, seller counteroffer. So I know what I have done. However, someone told me differently, and I'm like, no.
Right.
That's that, because it is a little confusing, especially for agents.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I'm going to go back in time, ladies and gentlemen, back in when I started real estate. And it used to be different back then than it is now. Now, everything has been more sophisticated regarding the language of the offers, the language of the seller and the buyer counteroffer, even the multiple counteroffer, better known as the SMCO form, right? So to keep everything in concise, and that way you're not confused, because you can easily get confused when there's a lot of back and forth with counteroffers. So this is the appropriate way of doing counteroffers. Whoever you represent, in the sake of today, you represent the buyer, okay? You submit the offer. The offer is presented to the seller. The seller reviews and says, everything looks good, but we're gonna add a little bit language difference in price, and then who's gonna be the escrow and title company. So the listing agent drafts a seller counteroffer. The seller counteroffer is going to be number one. That is sent out to the buyer's agent, and then that is presented to the buyer. The buyer says, well, you know what, I'm okay with this, I'm okay with that, but I am not okay with this. Let's send another counter. So the buyer's agent is going to send off a buyer's counteroffer number 1. Okay, it's not number 2 because you do not represent the seller. So it's seller 1, buyer 1. Buyer submits the counteroffer, seller reviews it, says, no way, Jose, I am not going to set those terms. Let's go with a second counteroffer. Seller signs the counteroffer number 2. So seller is counter 2. Seller counteroffer number 2 gets presented back to the buyer's agent, and the buyer's agent says, well, you know, I'm okay with that, but there's just one thing that I don't like. Let's just send another counter just to clean up the offer. And then I think if they accept that, then we're good. So the buyer's agent will submit buyer counter number 2. Okay, it's not 1, it's not 2, it's not 3, it's not 4. It's 1, 2, 1, 2. If there was 3, then it's 1, 2, 3 seller, 1, 2, 3 buyer. Meaning there's no confusion, because when you look at the counters, then when you're looking and analyzing the extent of all these terms, then you can be more organized that, okay, so these are all the seller counteroffers 1, 2, and 3. And we can look at the buyer's counteroffers 1, 2, and 3. That's the appropriate of doing it. So it's seller 1, buyer 1, seller 2, buyer 2. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not. Back in the 10, 15 years ago, that's how we used to do it. But it was driving everyone bananas, because there was like, okay, which one did we agree that they agreed to this? It was just so confusing. It just keeps everything very uniform. And that's the right way of doing it. Any other questions?
Yes. So I think I just answered, and thank you for that, because that was an excellent way. And I'm glad you continued to 3, because you stop at 1 or 2 and then people are like, oh no. So let me just get another question that was here. Okay, so this is kind of in a different direction, but still on offers. Can you make offers on other homes after putting in an offer on a home? And then this 2-part, that same person is asking, what if you were dealing with dual agency? And I'm not sure if that refers to the buyer 1, seller 1, or to this making multiple offers.
Okay,
Let's
yeah, I think it does make sense. So let me break it into 2 segments. So let's go with the first question. Can the buyer submit multiple offers to multiple properties? The answer is yes, you can. Okay, but I caution you folks, if you're going to go in that direction. And we're seeing a lot, because right now a lot of buyers are getting outbid by their offers. I just was talking to one of my agents here, and they submitted an offer, and the seller just, the listing agent, I should say, just told the buyer's agent that they have offers of $280,000, $280 above asking. Okay, not $280, $280,000 above list price. Okay, so that's what we're seeing right now in the market. To answer your question, and who was that question from, Deborah?
that was Mona. Yes, Mona was saying, would it be that, can you make offers on more than one home after putting?
Very good.
Already submitted one, and now
Very
they
good.
write on 2 or 3 more.
Right. Okay, thank you, Mona, for asking that question. So, yes, you can. Now, here's what we call the cherry on top. You got to be very careful. When you're submitting offers to multiple properties, you got to make sure that you're aligned, because the moment that one offer gets accepted, then you're in agreements and bound by that agreement, by those terms. So once you know, and this is where you got to educate, that's where you need to educate your buyer and making sure that the buyer is on the same page about understanding of submitting multiple offers to different properties. Because if the buyer submitting offer A, offer B, offer C, and what if two of those offers get accepted? Now you're in a kind of a sticky circumstance right now, because you've got two offers that you are in agreements to and accepted those offers. So how do you navigate those approach, or that how do you navigate that approach? Very simple. There's a form called WO, withdrawal of offer. When you know that the offer got considered, immediately submit the withdrawal of offer of the other offers that have not been reviewed or accepted, or you're still in counter offers. So what you're doing is you're eliminating the buyer from continuing in the process of acceptance and an opening escrow. Now, it has to be time of the essence. And what I mean by that, folks, it's very simple and very crucial. We're going to use three scenarios here. Okay, you submitted an offer on one property, you submitted another offer, another property, and then another offer on a third property, all right? And we're going to categorize it as A, B, and C. Okay. Offer A, you submitted it today. Offer B, you submitted today. And then offer C, you'll submit it tomorrow. Okay. Everything is still the same, 72 hours to, buyer to have that offer expire, right? 72 hours. But you submitted two offers today, one on property A and one on property B, and then one tomorrow, property C. Okay. Now you are waiting 24 hours, you get one offer considered no counter. Your offer was clean, legit, and the seller was in agreements to the terms, and you got the offer considered and then ultimately accepted. But you still have not heard from the other two offers. Then you got to draft the withdrawal offer and immediately send it over to those two other offers that are still pending. And what you're doing is acknowledging to the two offers, offer B, offer C, that you no longer are continuing with the offer. You're rescinding your offer. Therefore, now you just covered yourself from potentially being in two escrows or possibly three escrows. So the form that is utilized for the sake of argument is called the withdrawal offer, the WO offer. That immediately squashes that. Now, here's another scenario. The other scenario is, what if you do get two offers simultaneously accepted? And that can happen. You know, your intentions were not to buy two properties, or your client's intentions it was not to buy two properties, but their intention was, look, it's a very competitive market right now. I can't wait, 72 hours or 4 or 5 days. I got to move fast. If this is not going to happen, at least I want to have another opportunity with another property. And that's where we're seeing a lot. So what happens if you got these two offers and did not have the time frame to send out the withdrawal offer? Now, and I don't necessarily telling you to practice this, but if you do not do anything, then ultimately the offer will eventually get canceled. Because theoretically speaking, if you got the offer accepted, then ultimately you have 72 hours to put in your initial deposit into escrow. And then after 72 hours, if the buyer has not deposited their escrow deposit, then ultimately the seller has to send you what is called a notice to perform. And if you don't perform within 48 hours, then the seller has the right to cancel. Now, I'm not saying to practice that, because again, we work with a very tight niche industry that you're going to come across agents, if you do this quite for a long time and submit a lot of offers, you don't want to rub people the wrong way, listing agents the wrong way, because you just never know if you're going to come across another of his or her listing, or vice versa. So you just want to make sure that you have every corner covered and immediately know that, hey, submit the withdrawal of offer. But if that case does happen, and sometimes it will, then my suggestion is this, okay? Be authentic and just own up to it and say, look, reach out to the listing agent and explain the circumstances. I'd rather hear it directly from the buyer's agent. Hey, and I'll role play. I'll say, hey, this is Simon. I submitted an offer over on your listing at 123 ABC Street. And unfortunately, we have to rescind. I didn't have time, and I know that the seller graciously accepted our offer, but it looks like we got another offer considered. We had submitted multiple offers because we weren't sure. When we were in communications, you had told us that there was, 2 to 3 offers on the table. My clients were compelled that they wanted to consider in getting this property secure, but also, they've been in this rodeo many times. And unfortunately, this is like the 7th time that we submitted an offer and an offer hasn't been accepted. So they requested and authorized me to submit another offer, another property. And it looks like that's the property they're going to open escrow. So you take ownership to it. You reach out to the listing agent and you just explain the circumstances. If anything changes, by all means, I'll let you know. But that's the way to not burn bridges with a listing agent, and that happens. And you'll come across scenarios where your offer is accepted with two houses, but own up to it. Don't back out of it. Don't stop any communications. Just own up to it. I'm a true believer to giving the good, the bad, and the ugly. In these cases, it's the ugly conversation that no one wants to have, but it is necessary for you to do so. Okay. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
Okay, perfect. All right, let's go ahead and continue on the extension of a time. So these are 2 parts, guys. I'm going to talk a little bit about the counteroffers and also the expiration. So I'm going into the extension of time of a counteroffer. And this is the practice tip, expressly extending time to accept on the RPA. So this is the verbiage that you're inserting when you are asking for a time frame. So you can use an addendum or you can use a counteroffer to extend the time frame. Express the time to accept the RPA into the date and time of the seller's signature on the seller's counteroffer in section C of the counteroffer if the counteroffer made after expiration. So for example, folks, if you do happen to come across a expired offer, let's just say, for example, seller last minute says, hey, you know what, the seller's had to leave in an emergency. Unfortunately, what we thought we were going to review offers tonight will not happen. So what you can do is you can add it to the buyer's counteroffer, expressing that part of the RPA, and this is the language you want to use. RPA paragraph 31, expiration of offer shall be extended, and then that date of, I don't know, March 19. And then this is once the seller signs it, then what is done is modify the agreement for an extension. Okay, so I hope everyone understands that this is how you can extend it. You can do the counteroffer, or you can simply add an addendum to it as well. And here's the language on other terms. On the counteroffer is RPA paragraph 31, expiration of offer shall be extended until March 19, and then the seller signs off on it. Okay. Any questions on this, Deborah? Okay.
Not yet.
All right, so let's briefly talk about RPA, because we get a lot of questions, or I get a lot of questions regarding the RR and the RRRR, okay, which is better known as the request of repairs and the seller's response to the buyer's request for repairs. So these two do not have expiration dates, because I get this, gosh, how come the seller hasn't responded to our requests of repairs and we are scheduled to release physical inspections? okay? And the physical inspections of a contingency is 17 days, folks. So 17 days, with or without a response back from the seller can send you the notice to perform to release the physical inspections of your request or your account or contingency. And if you don't do so, then the seller has the right to cancel on you. So I'm going to explain a little bit of how these requests of repairs and sellers' response to those requests from the buyers work effectively. In a minute of an existing agreement terms, form IEA expires. So automatically, after the third day of the RPA, right, at 5 p.m., the offer technically expires. Why is it jumping? I'm sorry, hold on. No, it's not jumping. So
looks good on our.
Okay, yeah, I want to make sure that it's not jumping. So automatically at 5 p.m. on the third day of the offer, it's made late acceptance is subject to the same terms of the RPA. Has less risk of a waiver since the buyer will have generally already made a deposit, open escrow, perform inspections, and possibly negotiated repairs. So when seller will not sign the RPA on a timely manner, do not sign the RPA for the seller, period, even with verbal authorization. Do not have the client backdate the signature, okay? So these are the do nots do because it's one, a risk, and it can potentially put you in a liability. Never, never, never sign on behalf and never take verbal as an authorization. You always want to have everything concise to documentation, meaning the offers, the counter offers, the request of repairs. Also, never have the client backdate a form. Okay, that is not agreed. That's not an avenue that I recommend, and potentially it can confuse everyone. So never do that as well. Do not have one client sign for another without a power of attorney. Everyone should know this. Do not give a verbal acceptance or promise your clients will sign. Okay, so going back to the question here of the request of repairs, there's no expiration on the RPA, folks. Meaning if you submit a request of repairs in hopes that you get a response, the seller does not have to respond to that request, meaning that all properties are sold in as is condition. That even if the seller keeps silent till the 17th day, the seller does not have to respond. Now, if the seller doesn't respond, that's okay. The buyer doesn't have to move forward with the purchase of the property. Meaning if there's no response, the buyer has the right to cancel and move on. Cancel and then move on to another property. Now the goal is here, and this doesn't matter who you represent, if you represent the seller or represent the buyer. You want to always play what we call give and take, okay? In order for you to give and take, that is the master of negotiations. Meaning when you give and take, you ultimately push forward to close. Because here's the problem that I hear a lot. It's the ego in all agents, okay? Not you on this call, but all agents that have egos. And there's a lot of egos in real estate, I can tell you. The problem is agents typically kill their own deals, okay? It's not the agent's responsibility. They're not the ones buying the property. So take yourself out of the equation and focus to the core of the contracts. Because the end goal and your game plan is to close the deal, to take the buyer to the finish line. You want the buyer to close the deal because you're tired of showing property. You've probably been running around on the weekends or late evenings or during the day showing 2 to 3 properties. And it's been several months because you've been outbid, outnumbered in offers. and you're just getting tired. You want to get them in escrow, get them in escrow and close so you can move on to another buyer. So here's the technique and the strategy is educating the buyer, understanding the parameters of the focus point of what you're trying to accomplish, but having explanation conversations with the buyer and saying, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer, please understand that all properties are sold as is. And use the theory as put yourself as a seller, because you will be a seller at one point. If you were the seller, what would you do? Well, if I was a seller, I probably would say, you know, the house is functional. I don't have any problems with the house. What they're asking on request of repairs is okay. I'm willing to do some, but not everything that they're requesting. Wonderful. Okay. So here's what we call the give and take. The seller is willing to give something to continue the process, because here's the problem. And this happens when it's a softer market. Right now, it's a very aggressive market. And what we're seeing right now is that the buyers are releasing appraisal contingencies, releasing loan contingencies. Buyers are putting substantial security deposits. They're asking you to release or even reduce your physical inspections from a 17-day period down to 10 or even 8 days to do your inspections. So that puts a lot of pressure on the buyer to do all necessary inspections. So this is where you, as a professional realtor, really need to switch that hat and really bring in your A game and get those inspections done immediately. Because at the 8th day of the acceptance of this open escrow, you're either going to be able to release that contingency or request an extension of that contingency, or ultimately the seller is going to make that choice and send you the notice to perform. So you want to be ahead of the game, 2 steps ahead of the game. Immediately when you get that offer accepted, call your home inspection company or tell your buyer's agent, time is of the essence. We need to not lag on this because we got to do our due diligence. Your fiduciary responsibility as an agent is to make those appointments or have the buyer, if they have any home inspectors they'd like to use, to get them on the call, get that appointment set up, so that way you are within your time frame to release these conditions. Otherwise, guess who's going to make that call for you? The listing agent and the seller. So I'm telling you from a perspective of what we're seeing right now in the market, folks, so be very cautious. Now, the request of repairs can be 3 parameters, okay? Meaning you can ask for a request to repair or replace. You can ask for a credit in lieu of the repair of request, or you can also ask for a price reduction, or you can ask for all 3. Ask for repairs, ask for a credit, and ask for a price reduction. And all three can be part of the agreement. So you got to define what your buyers are wanting to accomplish here. Is it please do the repairs, or instead of doing the repairs, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, can you, in lieu of, just give us the credit? We estimate that it's going to be about $2,500 to do these repairs. We'll just take care of it once we close escrow. Or maybe it's a substantial that you were not aware. Maybe this home was on a raised foundation, and now the center blocks that are holding part of the house are so old, 40, 50, 80 years old, that, it's crumbling, and we have to reinforce the house because it's maybe dipping. And that can be anywhere from $10,000 to $15,000 to $30,000, $40,000, depending on the severity of the situation. So instead, what you'll do is maybe ask for a price reduction. And any of those 3 are perfectly fine. Now, with that being said, as this PowerPoint presentation states, there is no expiration. So if you submit a request today and you haven't heard anything 3, 4, 5 days, then what do you do in these instances? What should you do in these instances? Okay, And it's very, very easy. Pick up the phone and call the listing agent. Very simple conversation. Hey, this is Simon over at KW. Just wanted to find out about the status of that request of repairs that I sent over on Monday. You know, my clients are very eager. They're super excited. They want to continue, but they also have some concerns regarding, you know, the property, and therefore just wanted to see if the seller came back with a response. Well, now you're putting the listing agent on a corner to get the seller to respond. Well, Simon, thank you for reaching out. Unfortunately, we still haven't received a response yet. I should have something by tomorrow. Fantastic. My only concern is, you know, we press for time. I know that we're going to be releasing physical inspections in 8 days. So, you know, my buyers want to do their due diligence and make sure that, you know, they're, you know, working towards the same goal, you know, and what they're asking is pretty reasonable, you know, so I'm looking forward to getting a response. And then on the following day, if you haven't received it, guess what you're going to do? Pick up the phone and call. Hey, this is just a courtesy call again. You know, my clients are eager and just want to get an update status on that request. Oh gosh, you know, you're absolutely right. Thank you for checking in. We should have an answer by this afternoon. I presented the request of repairs. They are doing their estimates. I should have something by 6 p.m. Wonderful, okay? And guess what? What if they don't call you at 6 o'clock? What are you going to do? Get on the phone, text, and say, hey, this is just a courtesy call. You told me by 6 o'clock. You know, for me, that sounds like a very diligent agent, a professional agent that's doing everything necessary, you know, to make sure that the buyer's best interest is taken care of. You're going to look like a superhero, okay? Because again, these do not have any expiration dates on them, folks. So the only thing I can tell you is press upon is make those calls, ask for an update, and if the seller and the listing agent are not responding to you, then you're pretty much looking at the seller will probably not do any requests or repairs. Now, with that being said, on the MLS, I've seen where the properties, on the MLS, it'll state that, you know, all properties are, the property will be sold in as is condition. You've probably seen it on the multiple listing service, or even on the counter offer, okay? On the counter offer from the seller, and the seller, the listing agent defines, please do not ask for any requests, as the seller will not entertain any request of repairs. And that's documented, right? But after doing your due diligence, okay, does that mean because the seller on a counteroffer put, we're not going to do any request of repair, so don't even bother asking? The answer is, yes, you can, okay? Even though there was strict documentation that says, don't even bother asking because the seller will not entertain that request of repairs. And that may be the case, but it doesn't, what's the word? It doesn't matter if you at least make an attempt. You never know. I've been in situations, and some of the agents that I've coached them through this have made the attempt after the listing agent and the seller were strictly no consideration. They still submit a request and repairs, and guess what? They still get something. So it doesn't hurt to ask, even though, and I can role play, you know, and it's a very simple component here is, look, you know, Mr. or Mrs. listing agent, you know, I understand that we did sign a counter offer that says that, you know, seller will not entertain any requests of repairs. But after further review of the reports, you know, my clients are definitely concerned regarding certain major concerns on the property that they were not aware. Now, the home is a beautiful home, but the internal aspects of the home definitely have some concerns. And my clients have instructed me, and you throw it back at the buyers, okay? Don't put yourself in that because you knew what the document that came in from the counteroffer, but you have no control. Throw it back at the buyer and say, my buyers have instructed me to still submit a request of repairs because we still have the time frame to release this as a condition. I'm hoping that the buyer, excuse me, I'm hoping that the seller will work with us on this. It's nothing very significant, but it's something reasonable that, my buyers definitely would like to get that repaired or even get a credit for it. There you go, submit it. The only thing that can happen is it gets rejected. But what if they say, you know what, okay, you know what, you've been such a great agent, your buyers have been phenomenal. After talking to the sellers, the net proceeds that they'll get, definitely, $3,000 is something reasonable. So the sellers will entertain and give you $3,000 of credit in lieu of the repairs. There you go, folks. Okay, you just became a hero to your clients. Okay, so keep that in mind. All right. Any other questions, Deborah, that we have? I don't know if Deborah, can you hear me?
Yes, no questions right now.
Okay, awesome.
A great job.
All right, so that in a nutshell is basically all that I have in regards to expiration. So we talked about expiration of the offer. We talked about the counter offers. We talked about request of repairs. So just to kind of do a quick little recap in the 2 minutes that I have left, remember, an expiration of an offer is 72 hours. After 72 hours, the offer becomes void. It's an expired offer. Therefore, if you need more time, request that time. Okay, make sure that you pick up the phone again and talk to the listing agent. Hey, this offer is about to expire tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Just wanted to get the status of where the sellers are. Oh gosh, thank you so much for reaching out to me, Simon. We need to do an extension. Fantastic. You want me to do a counter offer on the buyer counter offer, extending that offer? Fantastic, great, or an addendum. A counter offer justifies the extension of the expiration. So there's no need for you to rewrite the offer anymore, folks. Okay, it's there. So what you're just doing is adding more terms to the purchase agreement. Okay, so that's number one. You're putting a counter offer with the language, and I'll take you back to that language. So you see, on the counter offer, you're just going to put paragraph 31, expiration of offer shall be extended until, and then that's where you have that dialogue in the conversation with the listing agent, folks. The listing agent says, look, we need to extend it. Tomorrow, unfortunately, it's not going to work. We need to extend it till Friday, the 19th. Fantastic. I'm going to get the counter sign off and then send over to you. So now you just extended what should have expired tomorrow at 5 o'clock, okay? So that's number one. Number two is the counter offers, okay? We talked about, counter offer number one, counter offer number two, counter offer number three. Keep it concise, okay? Keep it concise. So if you represent the seller, it's 1, 2, 3. If you represent the buyer, 1, 2, 3. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Make sense? Okay. All right. So the counter offers work as that. Now there's 3 components to the counter offer, ladies and gentlemen. There's the seller counter offer. There's the multiple seller counter offer. And then there's the buyer's counter offer. So whoever you represent is the offer that you're going to submit. So don't submit a seller counter offer when you're working with the buyer. So it's always going to be buyer counter. If it's buyer counter offer number 1, if it's buyer counter offer number 2, don't go and use the seller counter offer because it's going to confuse the listing agent, and it's going to make you look like you don't know what you're doing. If you work with the buyer, you stick with the buyer agreement. If you work with the seller, you stay with the seller agreement. Okay, and then just bullet point: seller counter offer number 1, seller counter offer number 2, seller offer counter number 3. Buyer the same, 1, 2, 3. Any questions on that? Okay. All right. Then the last, we talked about the request of repairs and the sellers respond to those requests. So remember, there's no expiration to these 2 forms. So if you do not hear from the seller or the listing agent, what do? Immediately pick up the phone and start making those calls. because it might be an oversight on the seller, it might be an oversight on the listing agent, especially if the listing agent has tons of other escrows open. They may not be in tune to what's going on. So this is where you need to be proactive and make sure you're making those conversations to know exactly, because it may feel like, oh gosh, the seller's not responding, what's going on? And you don't do anything. And before you know it, you got to release this as a condition. That's not a good position you want to be, and you're not doing justice to your buyer. So make sure you're proactive. You pick up the phone and start making those calls. It might have just been an easy oversight on the listing agent that totally forgot to reach out to you. Or maybe it is that the seller is not going to do any request. You knew what you were getting yourself into. Therefore, property sold in as this condition. Okay, fine. Thank you. And if you know that the cost of all these repairs is going to be 10, 15, 20,000, and the buyer knows, okay, maybe this is not the right home. Let's go ahead and cancel. Okay, so keep that in mind as well. All right, and I think that was pretty much it in regards to today's topic. Any additional questions, Deborah, that we have? I think you're on silent. You're muted.
Did you see my mouth going crazy?
I did.
I did put it. I put a request out if there were any additional questions. I believe her name Cicely Stokes had said, "Thank you, Simon. This was so informative." So I thanked her for joining. We appreciate
Awesome.
everybody that came in. We had a really nice attendance today. It was a great presentation. I always love sitting in on these as well. I gain from it. So thank you for sharing and enlightening us to all of the things that will help us and protect us.
Absolutely. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Awesome. Okay. Well, that concludes today. I appreciate all of you on the call. Until our next one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deborah. Appreciate you helping as well.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Okay. Oops.